What's up, guys? Jackal here with another Breaking the Build. This time it is my 72 Grapes of Wrath build. This is a Mirage Arrow, Herald of Thunder Pathfinder build. Very highly automated build, sort of a half auto bomber, half Mirage Arrow concept. This is a build that utilizes 3 uniques to get high clear speed. And it's very nice for, it's sort of a map farming, currency farming build. Just high clear speed, skip the boss if you want to, automated style build. It's very fun, very budget, and let's get into it here. So the first of these 3 uniques I mentioned is the Tempest Longbow. This of course is the faded version of the Stormcloud bow. It deals no physical damage, only lightning damage, very high attack speed, and the faded version gives you 100% increased lightning damage. Now this is global lightning damage. I saw a little bit of a debate about this on Reddit, but it is indeed global lightning damage, so this will increase all the lightning damage you deal, and almost all of the damage we deal in this build is indeed lightning damage. So it's very nice. The next unique is Impulse's Broken Heart. This is very good for the clear speed. We don't need the unaffected by shock because we are Pathfinder, so we're always unaffected by shock, but it has good life. It has shock duration, shock effect, and when you kill enemies who are shocked, they explode, they deal a percentage of their maximum life, and it's very nice added clear speed. Often you can just one-shot a pack, or your Mirage Archer will one-shot a pack, and the whole pack will explode, killing any rares or champs that was in it. So, very nice. It really increases the clear speed. And the third unique we're going to talk about also really increases the clear speed. It'll come as no surprise to anybody that it's Light Poacher. This is, of course, the Lich Helmet. Everyone's talking about this right now. Some people are complaining, some people love it, but the fact is that on any fast clear speed currency farming build, you probably want to run a Light Poacher. Now, the other uniques I'm running mostly are to help either with the shock or to help with the Light Poacher, or both. So I'm running 2 other Lich uniques for more Abyssal Jewels for the Light Poacher, and those are Tomb Fist, which give you, because I'm using Searching Jewels as a bow build, they give you maim on hit. And I'm using Darkness Enthroned, which of course is known as a very strong leveling belt with no level requirement. You can get 2 Abyssal sockets in it, and then the effect of the jewels is increased by 50%. That makes it a pretty much a decent belt all the way through the game. I'm still using it. I put on a Doriani's for a little while, and that was nice, but I prefer this just to get an extra max spirits from the Light Poacher, and to be able to slowly upgrade it as I get currency by replacing the jewels inside of it. And the last unique I'm using is Stormcharger Plated Greaves. This is for shock duration and shock effect. Shock duration and shock effect on boots that also have pretty decent movement speed, 20%, is really nice. We can't use the fizz damage converted to lightning really, although it does convert Light Poacher's damage, so that's nice. But overall it's mostly just for shock duration and shock effect. And it's nice because it also helps you on bosses. It helps you get that max shock on bosses, so those are the uniques. Other than that, it's just rares with nice life and resistances, and I looked around and I found that one of the Shaper mods gives you lightning damage leached as life, and this is a Volpact Life Leech build, so that's a very nice added survivability. So if you can pick one of those up, I'm not sure if it's always partnered with increased lightning damage or if that was just lucky. I think it's always partnered, lightning damage and then lightning leech together on shaped items, so maybe look for a cheap one of those with decent stats on it and pick it up. Okay, so let's look at the skill gems and how they're linked. This is a lightning arrow build. I chose lightning arrow mostly because the quality of the gem is shock chance, and we want to shock and keep Herald of Thunder up all the time. The way this build works is just keep Mirage Archer and Herald of Thunder up all the time, and all that automation will do all the damage for you and do all the clear speed for you, so you can do more running than you do shooting. It's nice. So, Lightning Arrow, Mirage Archer, elemental damage with attacks, lightning penetration, and added lightning damage. One thing I will say about this setup is that you'll notice there's no AoE in this setup. The only AoE in the setup is the natural chaining of Lightning Arrow. But my Light Poacher is enchanted with Lightning Arrow hits 2 additional enemies. So if you don't have this enchant, I would suggest replacing Lightning Penetration with Chain, or Fork, whatever your sort of clear gem of choice is. I would go Chain. And the reason that it's Lightning Penetration that I would replace is that since it's a farming build, it's sort of a currency farming clear speed build, most of the mobs you're killing don't really have resistances anyway. So Lightning Penetration is not as effective when you're not when it's not a boss killing build. So just throw Chain on there until you can get the enchant on a Light Poacher and you'll be fine. As for some other skill gems, my cast when damage taken setup is Summon Lightning Golem, Ball Lightning, and Knockback. This is to keep a golem up and to keep enemies away from me. I have a Orb of Storms linked with Curse on Hit Conductivity and Blind. This is to further increase the chance to shock, to keep the build running, and of course on an evasion build, or on any build, Blind is nice, but on an evasion build, Blind is very, very nice. I usually only throw this down, like stop to throw this down on tough rares or on bosses, but in those scenarios this is very, very nice. Or sometimes, I'll always throw it down beside an abyss. If an abyss rift opens up, I'll throw this down, and that really helps keeping the shocks up and getting everything killed. Other than that, I'm running, of course, my Herald of Thunder. It's a key to this build is the Herald of Thunder, and I linked it in the Light Poacher so that both the Light Poacher and the Herald will be linked with Innervate and added lightning. I just wanted to get as much lightning damage on as I could, and of course both of these skills are always shocking and killing, so it keeps your Innervate up. If you're going fast enough, your Innervate's up all the time, and that's a pretty nice damage boost. And I'm using Wrath, so those are my only 2 reservations, because the Herald is linked, so of course it reserves a lot more mana. So between Wrath and the Herald, I have about 98 life left, or sorry, 98 mana left to cast my skill. And I'm using Blink Arrow just to get out of sticky situations like volatiles, or to get through labyrinth traps. Okay, let's look at the skill tree. Like I said, this is a Pathfinder. Most of my skill tree is just grabbing life, evasion. The core defense of this build is acrobatics and phase acrobatics. I like to get acrobatics, phase acrobatics whenever I can on Ranger. For a bit of added damage, I am using a static electricity jewel. This is a nice spot for it because you can get a lot of dexterity. As you see, it gives me 1 to 112 lightning damage to attacks. Of course, not all your damage is from attacks. A lot of your damage is impulses, it's Light Poacher, it's Herald of Thunder. So this is completely not necessary, and even a good eye jewel might be better here. But I'm still using it. I want that Mirage Archer to hit hard, to keep Herald of Thunder up, to get those kills, to explode things with impulses. So you don't want to ignore your attacks, but to just keep in mind that it's not all your damage. I have 1 accuracy node here and a bit of accuracy in the starting tree for Ranger, and that puts me up to 90% on the character sheet, so that's about all you need. It's pretty good. And of course this accuracy is 20%, or gives you 20 dexterity, which is more lightning damage on the static electricity, so that's why I picked this particular accuracy node. I'm not going to talk too much about the tree because this tree can be changed. This tree can be altered in almost any way you want. You can go for duration if you want, because it affects both the Herald and the Mirage Archer. That would be a fine choice, and I might consider it in the later levels after I've filled out the life a little bit. You could also go for AoE if you wanted to maybe go up to Witch and get the life and AoE in the Witch, because AoE will affect, well, for one, it'll affect your Orb of Storms, which isn't that big a deal, but it will also affect your Herald and Lightning Arrow. Lightning Arrow's jumps, where it can hit extra targets, its targeting is based on AoE. So even though it's not AoE damage, you might get more clear speed out of a little bit of extra AoE from Lightning Arrow. That's just the mechanics of the skill. So you can do basically what you want with this tree. I just got a lot of life. I really wanted to get the Leech in the Shadow Tree, and so of course I got whatever else I could in the Shadow Tree that made it worth the trip. So I got the elemental damage and the life as well in the Shadow Tree. So between that Leech and the Duelist Leech down here, Vitality Void, and then also Leech on the Faded, sorry, not Faded, the Shaper Necklace, that makes it worth it to get Volpact. I had no regen anyway, and so even with this little amount of Leech, you know, 2 notable passives and an amulet, it makes Volpact very strong. And of course, you can put on Doriani's Belt if you want instead of the Lich Belt, and then that'll be a nice little boost to your Leech as well as some stats. That's pretty much it for the important stuff in the tree. I'm still trying to fill out some life, even though, you know, 4,200 is pretty good for just a currency farmer, but I want to try and end up at 4,500, 4,600. That'll be nice for farming those yellow maps. As for the Ascendency, I went straight for Master Alchemist. This is the most important Ascendency point, to make you immune to ailments all the time, so that you can use something like a Vessel of Vinctor, which I'm using. That's a nice little combination. So I keep Vessel of Vinctor up all the time. I'm also using Etziri's Promise and Divination Distillate. I just thought of these would be 2 nice unique flasks to use on a Pathfinder build like this, but though they're not necessary for the build. They were just my choices, and that's personal preference, but I highly recommend the Vessel of Vinctor. So, Master Alchemist also gives you 40% increased elemental damage during any flask effect, and of course flask effects for you are all the time, and 20% chance to shock. So that chance to shock is really, really huge for that build, for this build. I feel like you couldn't keep Herald up quite as effectively without this, and of course you wouldn't be doing as much damage without this. Now, of course, you need Nature's Boon to get to Master Alchemist, and I also went Veteran Bowyer with my Merc Lab. We don't do Fizz damage, so physical damage as extra random element really only affects Light Poacher. But I needed, or I wanted, a little bit of extra penetration, and enemies you kill that are affected by ailments grant 100% increased flask charges. Everything you kill almost is shocked, so this is pretty huge. To keep, it's pretty huge to keep all these unique flasks running, and to keep the build going smoothly. As you see, I haven't done Uber Lab yet, but I'm going to just fill out this Constitution Life wheel first, and then I'll walk into Uber Lab. It should be pretty easy with this build. It's actually not that bad a boss killer, even though it's designed as a currency farmer. And of course I'll be getting Nature's Adrenaline as my final Ascendency points, just for a little bit of movement speed and attack speed. So let's talk about pros and cons, how the build functions, how it feels, and why you might want to try this sort of Mirage Archer build. The main thing about a Mirage Archer build like this is that it's highly automated. Anybody who's seen or played an Auto Bomber build knows what that's like. The fun you can have with an automated build where a lot of stuff is dying and you're not really doing anything but running. Of course you have to attack. I attack pretty often. You know, you gotta keep your Mirage Archer up, and sometimes there's a tough rare or something, so you just sit and attack that, but it dies pretty quick. But for most packs, the Mirage Archer, the Herald, the Impulses, the Light Poacher, they do all the work for you, and you're just running and looting, and that feels good. And that's sort of the whole point of the build. And this build, although it's very budget, it does it very quickly. It's a very fast currency farming build, very fast clear speed build. So it feels good on a budget. That's the main reason you should use it. It's a very interesting, kind of a new build because Mirage Archer hasn't been out that long. And, you know, the Tempest bow it's based around really isn't that expensive. Your everyday Light Poacher very common. I think it's still only 4C, 5C. And I think Impulsa's is also only, you know, 4 or 5C. So you can get the 3 core uniques for this build for, let's say, something like, I think the Tempest bow will cost me 6C. So that's 16C, roughly. For less than 20C, you can get the 3 uniques that make this build work. So that's pretty good when compared to something like a Cosprey's Discharger or an Auto Bomber build, many of which also use Cosprey's. It's very, very cheap, and it's comparable. It's not as fast, mostly because you can't shield charge, but it's comparable at least. It's still a very efficient, fast build, and it's very fun to play. I would say the major downside to this build, in my opinion, is that it potentially relies too heavily on Light Poacher, which means that we're not sure how viable this build is in the long term. For this league, yes, very good build, very fun. You can, you know, farm some currency very quickly, but I'm not sure how dependent it is on Light Poacher for clear speed. And so when Light Poacher inevitably gets removed or made very uncommon or nerfed, I'm not sure what that will do to the viability of this build, if I'm being honest. Now, I think potentially you could replace Light Poacher with a very good Elder or Shaper rare, and then just have your Herald 5 linked instead of 3 linked. And that could be very similar in clear speed and power, overall power. So maybe it won't be the end of the world when Light Poacher becomes less available. Well, that was it for the build. I hope you guys really enjoyed it, and I will see you next time.